Welcome to our afternoon session on team teaching. Really glad to see folks here. So I'm Laurie Hatch, Associate Dean for the College of Arts and Sciences, and I would like to introduce our panelists. So to my right is Haley Duschinski. She's Director for the Center for Law, Justice, and Culture, and Associate Professor of Anthropology. And she's going to be talking about a team teaching effort in the Breaking the Law theme seminar. Nancy Manring is Associate Professor of Political Science, and she'll be talking about a team teaching initiative in Introduction to Sustainability. Daniel Phillips is Professor of Physics and Astronomy, and he's going to be talking about a team-taught course on knowing what we know. And Edna Wangui is Associate Professor of Geography, Capstone Seminar in Wealth and Poverty, and I timed this just perfectly to introduce Theresa Moran. So Theresa has been the curriculum themes coordinator this past year. She's a lecturer of English and is going to be talking about a team-taught course, Food Matters, Explorations in Food Across the Liberal Arts. So the idea here is that the curricular themes, many of the groups have been involved in team-taught courses, but not all team-taught courses are the same. They're really quite diverse in the structure and the dynamics and the pedagogical goals and how the course is structured. I remember the first time I taught a team-taught course was with a colleague of mine. We just decided, oh, this would be fun. Let's teach a course together. And so it was a social inequalities course. I know that we collaborated on the syllabus, but I think that might have been pretty much it. So I remember walking in the classroom and I was like, oh, we should have talked about a few other things. Like really different ideas about student engagement and participation and just classroom dynamics and pretty much down the list. So I've been so excited to be involved in discussions with our theme curricular leaders in these team-taught courses because of the very purposeful ways that they have gone about with their team teaching endeavors. And that's not to say that all the answers were generated from the beginning, and we'll be hearing a lot about that, I think, in our discussion today. We had a short meeting just to talk a little bit about what the session might be like. And we decided that it would make sense for each person on the panel to say a little bit about their respective course, how it's structured, the goals of the course, what the team teaching is like in terms of how it's been set up, and then talk a bit about how is the course integrated. And the phrase that we came up with was, what's the glue? You have different team taught courses, different team teachers. How do you go about integrating the course, providing cohesion? Something that my colleague and I notably lacked thinking about this social inequalities class some time ago. So would you like to just get us started, and we'll go with
Sure.
Haley in order? Is that okay?
That sounds good. Thank you so much, Laurie. So it's really a pleasure to be here today and to have the opportunity to talk about collaborative team teaching with the panelists and also with all of you in the audience. So thanks so much for coming. I'm Haley Duschinski, and I am the coordinator for the Making and Breaking the Law theme. And broadly, we think of the theme as a community of students and faculty who are all really committed to thinking and talking about law from a liberal arts perspective, looking at law in relation to society and culture and politics and power in U.S. context and also internationally. So we've developed a curriculum that reflects that and that is designed in such a way that it takes students from fall of freshman year all the way through senior year through this process of breaking down their assumptions about the law, what the law means to them. And then after that has been broken down, fall semester or freshman year, rebuilding a new understanding of law and its possibilities through their coursework in the curriculum, culminating in a capstone, a project-based capstone, or a senior research experience of some kind. So I've been working on developing the theme curriculum with a network of faculty, and in a more focused way with 3 other faculty members who are all from different departments. Myself from Anthropology, Kevin Yahalde from History, Kathleen Sullivan from Political Science, and Bruce Hoffman from Sociology Criminology. We're the curriculum committee for the theme. We started developing the theme 2 years ago in a retreat, and this fall we launched the theme by the 4 of us co-teaching a class, CAS 2500, Breaking the Law. This is the class that breaks down students' assumptions, and that's really the glue, I think, that holds it together. We're all 4 from different disciplinary perspectives, so we've designed the course really with the idea of prompting students to ask questions about the law, but seeing through our engaged interaction, through the collaborative teaching model, what it means to question the law from different disciplinary perspectives, right? So students are able over the course of the semester to see what does it mean to question the law from an anthropological perspective? What does it mean to question the law from a history perspective, political science, or criminology? So for first semester freshmen, this can also help them figure out a major that might make sense to them, a pathway. They start to understand different disciplinary approaches and methodologies. So I'll talk just a little bit about the class, the kind of nuts and bolts of it, and then we can have more discussion later. So basically, the class itself is a 4-hour class. It has 3 contact hours per week in the classroom. We meet twice a week. And then it has a special, a separate 4th hour of beyond the classroom activities, where they engage in different kind of events associated with the larger community, with the Center for Law, Justice, and Culture. So we have 2 classroom sessions per week. In one class, in one classroom setting, we all 4 meet together with the class of 120, and we engage in different kind of interactive lectures in the class. So the other class period of the week, we break into separate sections. Each one of us is responsible for a section of about 30, right? So we have both the large lecture setting and then also the smaller seminar setting. The seminars themselves allow us to be writing intensive in the class. So there are pretty heavy writing assignments. We try to work with first semester freshmen through the process of learning how to write in an undergraduate course. Our methodology is that the 4 of us have really worked closely together as a team with a high degree of collaboration and interdisciplinary integration. And this has taken place across all aspects of the class in terms of planning the class together, in terms of integrating the content, in terms of interactive teaching when we actually come together on those lecture days, and in terms of grading and evaluation. So from the very beginning, we really did all sit down and plan out this course together. We developed a common syllabus. We all worked through the challenges of struggling to integrate our various disciplinary perspectives, which is very much a work in progress. We had to talk through agreements on the order of the course materials, how they can unfold over time, what the different transitions would be. We've worked to intermingle our different teaching activities through the course. On any given lecture day, 2 or 3 of us might lecture together, and so those lectures have to be kind of developed in relation to one another, right? So on any particular given day, 2 or 3 of us might talk about the topic from our different angles with PowerPoint presentations and a formal lecture, and then also be engaging with one another throughout that lecture process. We all attend all of the classes, and then we also provide feedback to one another about like what worked well and what didn't work well. We discuss and we commiserate with one another about what happens in section, right? When you have these kind of problematic class dynamics. I mean, this is actually something that's quite nice. Usually you're kind of working them through on your own. But in this case, we're able to meet together outside of class and say, like, do you remember, that problem I was talking about with a student a few weeks ago? Like, this is how it's developing. We can kind of give feedback and support and ideas on that. And we've also struggled through the grading process together, everything from developing the assignments to then actually thinking about evaluation process and criteria, and then working through issues around the grading at the end of the class. So these have all been very, very challenging forms of collaboration. It's kind of a high level of interdisciplinarity and a high level of interaction. We've taught the course once before in fall of last year, and now we're in the process of revising the course to offer it again in this coming fall. So just yesterday we met for about 3.5 hours and talked through some of the things that we know we need to work on over the summer in order to rearrange the class, try to think of different ways of introducing new writing assignments, and correct some of the weaknesses that we recognized from last semester. So this particular model of team teaching, I think, has a high degree of integration, and it has a distinctive character because of that high degree of integration. That's kind of the hallmark of the course. We struggled throughout the course the first time to explain that to the students, right? The students are experiencing the class. It's one of their first college classes, so they don't necessarily understand what it means for a class to be integrated in that way and how that might be different from what they could expect otherwise. So I think that this is the greatest strength of this particular model, but also its greatest challenge is the degree of integration across all of these different levels.
Thank you.
We're not doing any questions at this point, right?
Why don't we just kind of go through and then
No.
we'll open it up for discussion.
Okay. The sustainability theme is in the somewhat enviable position to be building on an already pretty strong institutional basis. We've had a sustainability plan in force for a number of years as an institution. We have an Office of Sustainability that one of its primary missions is to make sure the plan is implemented, working with a variety of stakeholders across campus. But the Office of Sustainability also, for a number of years, has provided a lot of opportunities for student engagement. So that's a tremendous asset. The other thing about sustainability that makes it a little bit different is that although it's a very new discipline, it is actually a growing discipline in and of itself. Certainly in the last decade, we've seen a lot of growth in terms of scholarly research and different kinds of teaching, all of which is very multidisciplinary. So we were very much influenced by, actually it was the way that our dean, Bob Frank, first described the opportunities that themes might provide, and that was to give students a lens to look through as they then go about meeting their breadth of knowledge requirements. And the thing about sustainability, first of all, it's a topic that I think almost everyone's at least heard the word. And by definition, sustainability has to involve the integration of, the classic sustainability models in various, some of them are a Venn diagram and some of them are concentric overlapping circles, but basically it's economy, society, and environment. And it's the integration of all that. Our challenge, I'm sorry, lost my train of thought. So back to the lens. So, in colleges and universities, we would have the social science disciplines, including economics, but economics is its own circle in the sustainability model, and the environment, which would then bring in all kinds of scientific disciplines. And our challenge is to integrate those, and that's what gives students the lens. And so one of the phrases that I had after our meeting among all of us, we have this narrative glue, and it's really composed of two parts. One part is the concept of sustainability itself, and just showing students the model and talking about the different components. That is a lens to look through so that students learn this knowledge about sustainability and then go out and look at everything else they do and other activities in the world through that lens. So we had that advantage to start with. Because sustainability is inherently multidisciplinary, in a somewhat similar fashion, we had a core group of faculty working all of last year. That was myself and my colleague Dina Lopez from geology and Edna Wangui from geography, and at that point in time, Alyssa Bernstein from philosophy. And so we spent last year, developing many of our ideas associated with the theme. And then in May of last year, we expanded that group to create a syllabus creation workshop. We knew we wanted to develop an introductory course. And so the participants in that workshop included, again, Dina Lopez and Edna Wangui, and also from geography, Harold Perkins, Kelly Johnson from biology, and Alyssa Bernstein from philosophy. And we spent 3 days figuring out how we would put this together. And our intention all along was to create a team-taught course where students would have the opportunity to see the interactions between professors in the natural sciences and professors in the social sciences, and to see that throughout the course. So that was one of our goals. The other intention was, because sustainability by definition has to be, has to touch on all these different topics, we needed a team of faculty with a broad, set of expertise. So we spent 3 days figuring out a structure and ended up with a course that consisted of about 5 or 6 introductory weeks focused on sustainability as a topic. And I'm the lead instructor, so I taught, those 6 weeks. And then the beauty of sustainability is it encompasses so many different topics that it means that as we go forward in the future, there are tremendous opportunities for other faculty who might want to be involved, because there are just so many topics that can fit within the realm of sustainability. In this particular year, we looked at the idea of ecosystem services. What do ecosystems do for humans? We looked at global warming and ways to address global warming. We looked at water, both freshwater access as well as what's happening in the oceans. And then in terms of the, really the professor-delivered content, we also looked at biodiversity. Part of our narrative glue is that there's an international team of scientists that have developed a model. It's based in empirical science, but it's very much a model in progress. And the model is called planetary boundaries. And it provides another lens to look through. So part of our narrative glue, on the one hand, we've got this model of sustainability, which we have revisited at multiple points throughout the semester. And on the other hand, we have this planetary boundaries model, which shows us where we've got major problems, like biodiversity loss or climate change. And we've shared that with the students at multiple times throughout the semester. And then, I'm the wrap-up at the end as the lead instructor. So we are teaching it this semester for the very first time, and I think we've all been jotting down notes on, okay, this worked great, and this is what we want to revise. But we've had a tremendous group of students who are really engaged and very inspiring young people, and they ended the semester by focusing on sustainable solutions and created some really wonderful posters that we were able to display in a couple events. So, yeah, so that's been our focus right now. We have one Tier 3 course on sustainability citizenship that's working its way through the curriculum process. And given that sustainability is such a very large tent, I think it would be great if we had a variety of capstone type options that would make sense for different students in different courses in college, or programs in colleges and with different interest areas. So I'll stop there. Probably out of time.
Thank you so much. And it's, I think, a nice juxtaposition that Theresa Moran is sitting right next to you to talk about food studies.
Because food is such an important part of sustainability, and sustainability is such an important part of food. But also the course is called Food Matters: Explorations in Food Across the Liberal Arts. So we also want to keep that element in our mind, the context of the investigation of food in the liberal arts as we move into this. And in contrast, really, to Haley and Nancy, who have, their courses have a more integrative approach. Food studies, of course, is a relatively new academic discipline, and it's completely new here. And so this really affects the way that we in the food studies theme went about designing a gateway course. Our gateway foundational course, visual, there you go. So you can keep that in mind as we go through the life of the chicken. So our course is based as a module-based course, again, in contrast to the previous two speakers. And our modules are in anthropology, biology, English, geography, history, classics and world religions, linguistics, and psychology. And we also have a guest lecturer who has come in at both semesters. So this is the second time that we've offered this course. And really, the concept of team teaching we're the relay team. The baton is passed. And that's, again, because of the nature of food studies here at Ohio University. We need more time to aim to be integrative and to synthesize. We are a multidisciplinary approach to looking at food studies as the relationship of food and the human experience. So, food science is a standing field, but we're really the relationship between the human experience and food. And the aim of our course is that, we believe that fundamentally that everything and anything we eat, is simultaneously personal and political, and that it's also a public act. And so that's how we approach, that's our overriding intellectual concept of this course. But then, as I said, we are a relay team. We have modules by the archaeobotanist Paul Patton. Then we go to Tim Anderson and Brad Yokish from geography. Then we go to biology, and we take the students into the lab with Karen Mamonate to examine honey under a microscope. Then we have Stephanie Miller also in bios. Then we go to Jackie Maxwell, and Jackie Maxwell segues the students into the humanities perspective on the relationship of food and the human experience. Then we go to David Bell in linguistics and Claudia Gonzalez Viejo in psychology. And then we wrap it up with our creative writer from the English department, Eric LeMay, who is an author of an outstanding book on cheese, The Immortal Milk, highly recommended. And in this, in our class, we have this multidisciplinary worlds. And so what really the challenge is, we are asking our students to take a rocket ship every 2 weeks to a different world. And that's to experience, a different kind of a galaxy of scholarship and of teaching methodologies that are represented by these different disciplines. And this does put an extra burden on the student that we really have not, full disclosure, not fully understood how to ease that transition up and down in the rocket ship. But the benefit of it is that they are exposed to all these different methodological approaches and also different types of scholarship and actually the different language of every discipline. So the glossary of terms and definitional terms required for each module are given to the students on day one. And so the students understand that there is, as you go from planet to planet, you will be using language in a different way. Okay.
I just said I like that.
Oh, okay, good. Well, how about this? So the glue, as Nancy, the narrative glue. So we, as I said, we're multidisciplinary, side by side, or transdisciplinary, thinking of food as the focus, going across the disciplines. But we also like to think of ourselves as the cafeteria lunch line. And I am the lunch lady. And so I am the glue that holds the thing together because I am pushing the people through the line. And in that sense, what that means in the classroom is that no more tater tots. Yeah, so it is, yeah, one dessert. So I provide the opening framework of the course, and then I hold a midterm review and a debrief, do all the management, which is of the Blackboard, which is very difficult, and assembling the exams, proctoring the exams, grading the multiple choice, and sort of figuring out how to make this manageable. This is the second time that we have held the class. So first fall semester, starting out of the gate, we had a cap at 20, we had 23 students. This spring semester, we capped it at 30, we had 33 students. We have a cap at 30 for the fall. We already are at 30, so we're raising to 35, and we have a waiting list. And yet this is a 1410. It was originally viewed to be entry level for freshman class. We have no room for freshmen. So I think that speaks to the interest in this area and to the new kind of teaching that it offers on our paper evaluations because of the challenge. You are going to give me a minute, right, when I'm coming to the minute end? Yeah, okay, getting there. Okay, so the students have noted that they like the diversity, they like the change, they like learning little bits of different things. But the students have to get used to the new prof every 2 weeks, and they have a challenge of making the connections across modules, which to us is self-evident. Well, of course, but not to the students. So we're working on that, and we're aspirational in terms of interdisciplinarity. We're not there yet. Standardization in terms of standardization in terms of presentation of material, in terms of size and type of assignment, and in terms of course, examination style and format are also sort of pedagogical challenges. But the goodwill is incredible.
Wow, that was great, thank you. Now I'm thinking about the lunch lady as curricular glue. So thank you.
Okay.
Daniel?
Sure. So my name's Daniel Phillips, and I am here on behalf of this class. You may have seen these around campus. So, I guess 2 years ago when Themes was launched, I was interested in how physics could contribute to the Themes initiative, and one issue that I've always been particularly interested in is sort of epistemological questions within science. And so what ended up happening, I think it's fair to say, is that we gathered a group of 4 people together. So myself, Kevin Uhalde from history, Beth Quitzland from English, and Jeremy Morris from philosophy, who were interested in exploring issues of knowledge, uncertainty, and prediction across a whole bunch of different disciplines. In fact, a broader range of disciplines than those just mentioned. So that's what our class tries to explore. So we try to explore, the class is called Knowing What We Know, and we're really trying to get students used to the idea that that behind the facts that they learn, there is process, and there are common themes in knowledge construction that cut across disciplinary lines. So that makes the class kind of a strange beast. It's not attempting to tackle a particular societal problem like sustainability, right? It's instead dealing with this somewhat, I believe our dean described it as arcane issue of how you know what you know, right? So the structure, as I've said.
Can I just stop you for a second? So how many people are students, introductory students, do you think could sign up for such a thing? So what was your?
So we had 80 students sign up for the class, which was where it was capped. So we were very pleased with that because, people would ask me what I expected the enrollment to be, and I would tell them, 40 plus or minus 40, right? So, yeah, error bars are a subject in the course. So the structure, as I've said, has 4 instructors of record, and so we were in the classroom every day. The class met Tuesdays and Thursdays for 80 minutes, and so we were there every day. We did the majority of the lecturing, but in order to access other disciplines and talk about knowledge construction and uncertainty in those, we also had other people come in. So, for example, Ryan Fote from the Department of Geography, Daniel Hembry from Geological Sciences, Nancy Tatarek from Sociology and Anthropology, all came in and talked about how facts get established, and to some extent, certainly in Ryan's case, how that then plays forward into issues of predicting the weather. And I think those were very useful case studies for the students to see. So this course is complex, right? We have 4 instructors of record, you have guest lecturers, and we have the structure with the 2 80-minute lectures a week. And so there was a lot of management to try and use that time optimally. And then we also had a 4th hour, it's a 4-credit hour class, where students discussed or worked on exercises with one of the instructors of record. So Beth Quitzland had a section, Kevin Uhalde had a section, Jeremy Morris had a section, and I had a section. We each taught 20 students, and we would take them through, for instance, Ryan designed a very nice weather prediction exercise for us. Nancy did a genealogy exercise, and so we took them through those exercises. So we told the guest lecturers to think of us as their TAs, and that's what we did, right? We basically took the students through some issue of how you establish facts in a particular discipline each week. So the glue, I think to some extent, the four of us who were there all the time were the glue, but we also we tried to make sure that the guest lecturers also were aware of threads that were running through the entire course. So we had a list of key terms, much like what you guys were talking about. I think that's a really excellent idea for a class like this, and we're going to make more use of that the next time. And we would sort of try and, in general, the guest lecturers would come in the week before and talk to the four of us and tell us what they were going to do, and so we'd be able to say, oh, that's really nice, because that connects to this thing. Say we talked about models, back in week 2, you can remind them of that. Because I think the integrative piece is really hard for the students, right? Sort of it's fun for us. We're like, oh, wow, this thing that you do over there in text reconstruction, that's actually like an application of Bayes' theorem, and you can do that statistically, and but so the students may not be that jazzed about that. But even if you think of something less quantitative, even then they may not see that there's a connection between, for example, the use of documents to establish the past in history and the use of rocks to establish the past in geology, right? But that's the kind of connection that we love to make, but we've got to sort of lead the students a little more to that. And I think that figuring out how to do that more is a challenge for the next time we teach the class, which will be in spring 2016. So in terms of other ways that we tried to glue things together, we had weekly planning meetings all of last semester, 2 hours a week, and we did it again this week. We found we had to sort of equilibrate. I think this is also associated with what other people have said about the group therapy aspect of teaching a class like this. You could talk about what was going well, what was not going well, struggles in grading, and again, just norming things across 4 different disciplines and making sure that all sections are being graded by roughly equal criteria is something that you have to do in this situation. So yes. So the last thing I want to say is that we deliberately designed the course to be somewhat modular. So although, for instance, Kevin and I did a lecture together on creation stories, and all 4 of us did a lecture a couple of weeks ago on the end of the world and different disciplinary ends of the world. So we can talk about that more in question time if anyone's interested. But even so, right, we wanted to make sure that if, for instance, Kevin goes on sabbatical in a couple of years, we can still teach the class. Right, so the class was very carefully structured so that essentially you can move things around, right? And this is relatively easy in a course that is so broad because you can think of a ton of different things that could get plugged into this class. And that means that I am done.
So the course that I'll be talking about, even though I was involved in the sustainability class as well, but the one I'll be talking about is a Tier 3 class that is titled Seminar in Wealth and Poverty. And this is a class that is the Capstone course for the wealth and poverty theme. And just to tell you a little bit about how that theme is structured, we basically look at within the theme, inequality is our interest, inequality in the US, inequality abroad, different forms of inequality. And so we've designed the theme with that in mind. We have 5 intro classes. The students don't take all 5, but they can take one of them. We have a service learning course, and again, there's a variety of classes that students can choose from. We have a variety of electives in different disciplines, including outside of the College of Arts and Sciences. And then we have the Capstone seminar. So this is really the only class where all the students in the theme come together. And so we had that in mind when we were designing the class. And we have 4 instructors involved. And the 4 of us have been involved in the theme from the beginning. The 4 of us are actually part of the core faculty for the theme. So the core faculty has myself, in geography, Yang Kim in geography as well, Robin Mohammed in African American studies, who's actually the only one who's not involved in teaching the class. We have Steve Scanlon in sociology, and we have Mariana Dantas in history. And 4 of us are involved in teaching the class. So we've had this vision since the very beginning of the themes and our discussions on where the theme will go. So we had a lot of meetings when we were planning. We were all very deeply involved in planning the theme, but also this particular capstone class. And in the process, thinking about the students, the fact that they may have followed very different paths, although they'll be exploring inequality, but they followed very different paths to get to the capstone class. The other interesting thing is that this is the themes were launched fall of last year, and yet we are teaching our capstone class. And that might seem a little odd, but it's because we've had students with this interest even before the themes came, and the themes help organize them and guide them and provide that service to students who already have particular interests. So we actually did have students that were ready to earn the certificate, which we have a certificate that's parallel to the theme, a certificate in wealth and poverty already. All they had to do was take the capstone class. So we have the 4 of us, and we've really, the glue, what we've organized it around is the theme of inequality, which is the theme that's present in wealth and poverty. And 4 of us are looking at different aspects of inequality. We have Dr. Dantas looking at historical processes that have led to the construction of race. We have Dr. Steve Scanlon, who's looking at poverty, wealth, and political inequality in the US, and I'm looking at gender and other forms of inequality. And we have Yang Kim, who's looking at global inequality. Now, what's interesting about this particular 4 modules, they are modules, is that they are already very integrative. They are already interdisciplinary in themselves, even though they are being taught, one theme is taught by a historian, another by a sociologist, another by a geographer. They are, these particular individuals, the instructors, already our interest is interdisciplinarity, and this is something that you find we already do in our other classes. So it was kind of very natural to come and do to have a tier 3 class where which already recognizes or actually insists on synthesis and interdisciplinarity. So in terms of the glue, we do have us, holding it together. I am the lead instructor, which is kind of has a different meaning from the other themes, because we are actually all sharing the teaching equally. But somebody has to build the Blackboard site. Somebody has to send out those reminder emails. So it's those kinds of things, administrative things that I do, but the actual instruction is shared equally by all 4 of us. So in addition to the discussions, it's taught in a seminar format. In addition to those discussions in class, we also had theme events, they're not really, we wrote them in the syllabus, so students knew that you needed to also participate in this variety of wealth and poverty events to be able to complete this course. And we had a lot of them, but we only asked students to attend the 5 that fit their schedule. We had a field trip. We have just actually completed the 10 days of wealth and poverty in Appalachia. And so with that were a variety of activities that students could go to. But we had other talks as well. And so in a way, all of that was really holding the, it's a kind of glue that was, it's a common thing that the students were doing in the course, even though they were not all doing it at the same time. Something else that's coming up that I'm actually very nervous but interested in seeing is the way we decided to do our projects, our final projects. So we did, the students did projects as you would expect in a tier 3 class, in an upper level class. But typically when I teach, I have them do presentations, in a traditional way, PowerPoint or Prezi, something projected there and someone standing and talking and using a pointer and advancing the slides, that kind of thing. But, coming from so many different disciplines and many different teaching styles. We are, they have to do a paper and turn it in, but then they can present a poem. You know, they can present whatever, they can tell us about what they did in all this. They can act it out, they can do a poem. And I'm very, very nervous about that because that's not what I do. But I'm also really looking forward to seeing what they come up with. They can make a poster, it's entirely up to them. So that is something that I would not have been getting into if, you know, if we weren't doing this kind of thing. And I'm really excited about that. And it's been very exciting to learn from the people that I'm team teaching with on how you can actually do this successfully. They've done, some of them have done this successfully, so they're actually teaching us on this. But, you know, our collaboration goes, I've also already mentioned with the planning, with the teaching, but also with the evaluation. We each evaluate our students in the different modules. We have, each person teaches, runs a module for 3 weeks. But we also come up with a, you know, with how to evaluate this going to the theme events, what the final project will look like. So there's a lot of, there's just a lot of meeting and discussion and kind of moving that forward. But I'm not the lunch lady, even though I am the, you know, the key person. But we do have that module where one person comes after the other. But there has been a lot of discussion that went before that to kind of see the continuity, to ensure there's continuity and to refer back, even though we don't attend each other's classes, but we refer back to each other's modules just because we've, you know, we've talked a lot about what's being taught. And I did not time myself, but I think I may even have gone 1 minute over, so I'll stop talking now.
You're good.
Good.
Thank you so much. Certainly a wide range of approaches to team teaching, how the course is structured, the dynamics. It's actually many more dimensions of team teaching variations than I had thought of initially when we thought about this panel. So let's open this up for discussion and questions, comments. Linda?
So you teach the Capstone course, but all of you were in situations where you collaborated to develop your individual themes or your group's themes. But what are the pieces between the intro course and the Capstone? And is it different for every student? And does that affect their major? Do you understand my question?
I can speak. I think we can all speak to that. I'll just kick it off, and you all can fill in. So, so the general idea is that we have. The four of us were describing the kind of gateway courses or intro-level courses in some capacity, and the idea is that that brings students into the theme in a way, and perhaps the different parts of the course point towards or preview issues that they might then follow up on later in upper division courses. Students all come from different majors, so after that interdisciplinary first course, then they continue to take courses in their majors and take courses that might relate to the theme that fulfill different gen ed requirements, right? So there's a distribution across natural sciences, social sciences, and humanities. So we've all of the themes have prepared these master lists according to different sets of criteria about courses that we consider loosely to be part of the theme. And I think we all feel that there's a degree of flexibility around that, right? So those are basically advising tools that we can use to point students towards different courses that, that they may wish to take to help them kind of continue to deepen their understanding of the theme as they move towards graduation. And then the idea of the project-based capstone or the interdisciplinary capstone is something at the end that kind of allows them to synthesize or bring together whatever they've learned through their different arrays of classes that have brought them to that point.
And are those always in a tier 3? Or
No.
No?
They're not. In the case of wealth and poverty, they are in a tier 3, but.
You have a tier 3 designation, right?
Yes, for wealth and poverty, but I don't know that all the themes have a tier 3
They
capstone
can be in
experience.
departments. They can be department-based.
So the courses where students individually choose, and they can be related to the theme, you're meeting gen ed requirements, but there could also be people not affiliated with the theme.
Absolutely,
Yes,
right.
absolutely.
And there's students in those intro courses who maybe ended up there for one reason or another, but they choose not to really pursue it. Students can come and go from one theme to another. So they're not tightly bounded, they're pretty porous.
One of the things that's been really interesting, and this is certainly true with sustainability because of that institutional history, but it's actually shared, I think, pretty broadly, is when you go into the themes website and click on any individual theme, let me just say that my voice is not quite normal today, so pardon that. But when you look at the list of elective courses, and I think this is part of what speaks to the power of thinking about a theme as a lens to look through, because there's really quite a wide range of courses all across disciplines. We began with a focus on arts and sciences, but I think most of the themes, if not all of them, are reaching beyond arts and sciences. And so there's this incredibly rich list of electives. So, students can scan those courses and find courses that will meet particular requirements. There are also courses that are, just definitely make a connection with particular majors. But I think part of the power is students, it really makes these connections. So it makes these connections within the context of a theme, and it also makes connections across themes, since you don't have to, tightly register for one theme and that's it, you're just in one theme.
There are many
So-
students that begin maybe in food studies, and something about food takes them to sustainability, or maybe food justice, or to security, or to wealth and poverty, or to the future of agriculture. So
Not a
it's,
spaceship anyway.
and they might have to, yes. So,
Yeah.
and in food studies, there isn't currently a tier 3. There's a tier 3 in health sciences and professions. We have a tier 3 that's under development, and some of them have certificates, some don't. So it's really an attempt to enhance advising. It's not lockstep, very porous.
So yeah, so I had to talk to the KWWKers, as I call them, right, last week about this. And so it's like choose your own adventure, right? It's like you can plot your path through and you can choose your own level of involvement. And I do, to answer the end of your question, it's meant to sort of cut across the major, right, or provide, if I would say, an alternate dimension in intellectual space, right? So, so if the major goes this way, the theme can go this way. So certainly in physics, we talk about this because, the physics students go out and are just often trying to find classes that fit their schedule to complete, humanities or social science requirements. So this was we sat down and well, it would be nice if they could actually take classes on philosophy of science or the intersection of science and society or whatever, right? So that's one of the goals, right, at least from physics perspective. But I think there are analogous issues in many disciplines. So.
Thank you. So the themes provide a lens, but within these team talk courses, there are different lenses as well, right? So I guess maybe if we could return a little bit more to the interdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity of working together to offer these courses within the themes. Let's see what other questions that you might have. And Bob, did you want to say anything at this point?
They're trained well up there. I think we're converging on a similar description, because that's exactly what I just wanted to say about the themes don't have requirements. There may be certificates that students end up pursuing, but it's not a requirement to be in the theme to do the certificate for it. I thought folks did a great job.
And we also want to mention that the co-curricular activities draw in many students who might never take a course, right? But this is their interest, and so they come to events, they come to workshops, they go on field trips, because they're interested, but maybe they don't want to sign up for a course. So those are open for everyone.
That's a very important aspect, I think, of the success of the theme so
Yes.
far, that sense of community that's been created outside of the classroom and that's encouraged and fostered through the way that the classes are structured themselves, right? The classes can point students in different ways towards those types of classrooms, activities beyond the classroom. And that becomes part of the student's learning experience, and then it's something that students can also then continue to pursue across time, right? And so far as those events might include community partners that then could become internship sites or could, we all have this experience in different ways, right? Service learning opportunities, undergraduate research opportunities are often connected with those types of activities.
So other forms of integration that go beyond the classroom.
Classroom,
That's a
right.
really good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
So other questions, comments?
I mean, if others.
Go ahead, Linda, come on.
So I'm curious, any ways that this has advantaged, this is like a nuts and bolts kind of question, but advantaged or disadvantaged you within the context of your home department?
That's my question.
I'm thinking of workload.
So,
Well,
So
No,
in terms
not-
of the team teaching or
Yeah, I don't
involvement
mean
in the
like
themes
relationally,
or?
like, oh, I like my team or I don't like my, I mean,
yeah.
really practically speaking, are there ways that participating in this either advantages you because of the way your home department sees it, or disadvantages you?
As being a
Yes.
member of a
Well,
team
well.
taught
so Haley, just
course,
Right.
yeah.
So I
But
think it's
I
important.
just want to say that we have my course is for overload. So that's a whole
Right.
different discussion. Maybe I should have said that at first. That
Yeah.
differs from the
Yeah,
on-load.
ours
exam.
also. is
So
on
yeah, so this
overload.
is the first
First
thing
line.
that we've got to separate out, right? So certain of us were fortunate enough, I guess, to negotiate with our departments to teach the classes on load. And I think it's probably fair to say that this enables a significantly larger investment than if you're doing it as an overload, right? So all the planning that Haley and I were talking about, I think this was very much enabled by the fact that I think all four of your people and all four of my people were teaching the class on load, right? So, you know, that's this. So this, you know, so this is part of my standard teaching assignment. Bigger departments have been able to flex their teaching in such a way. The college has been quite accommodating in terms of providing buyouts where necessary. But yeah, it hasn't forced me to, you know, do more teaching in that sense. Although I think it's probably true that I worked harder on this than I would have on teaching Physics 2000 or something, right? But I chose that path, right? But I did. I'll leave the guys who were doing it on overload to speak about that in a minute. So I mean, and then beyond that, I think the answers in terms of how it's perceived, in terms of, you know, the institution and contribution of the department to the institution vary significantly from department to department. And you can probably guess, right? It depends a lot on whether the department sees itself as wanting to contribute to this effort or thinks that the effort is somehow peripheral to its mission, right? So there is, I think it's fair to say, a range of levels of support for faculty doing this across different departments.
I think it's also a work in progress, because I think the themes initiative, the initiative itself, and then I think this is reflected in the way that we teach our courses, it's very much guided by trying to connect students with, you know, like the big problems and issues of the day and of their lives. And so my view is that students connect with a variety of different kinds of problems, but they don't necessarily connect those problems with the variety of disciplines that have to come into play to actually solve that problem. So I think I mean, I'm perhaps a hopeless idealist here, but my view is that as the themes mature, because students will be entering, I think, very engaging conversations around problems that they know are the problems of their lives, I think it's likely they are going to discover disciplines that they may not have ever thought they would be interested in. And I think, at least, you know, in each time we teach a team-taught course, we have the opportunity to expose students to, you know, whatever range of disciplines are involved. So in our sustainability course, you know, there's 4 of us, 4 different disciplines. So again, I guess I'm the optimist, but I think that it's still a work in progress in terms of seeing how the departments will benefit from students being involved in the themes and then finding their way to a variety of either majors or courses within departments.
If I could also comment, the Tier 3, our course was taught on overload, and this is something that we actually had to bear in mind that when we were designing the class, because we weren't sure which one of us would be still available to do this on overload another time, because we are still doing our regular teaching. But we deliberately designed the class on what taking it through UCC and CCO, all those nice people. We deliberately designed it so that it would still keep the inequality theme, but you could look at a different aspect of inequality depending on who was involved. So there's, you have to figure out who's available, and that's my job also as lead instructor, to find out who will be able to teach this class the next time. Already half of the people who are involved are not going to be able to teach it next time, but I have ideas about how we're going to go about that. But just to keep it moving and not lose sight of what the course is trying to do, still have that, even as you move from year to year, probably with a changing team. And actually, I was very interested in hearing from, others on the panel who are actually able to figure out how to teach this on load. Those are models that I'm very interested in, because I know at least with that group, with our group, they would really have wanted to be able to attend every class and participate in, when you think team teaching, you think about it to that degree, but there's the time component. They also have their regular load, and it just wasn't going to be able to work out. This is the very first time that we've taught the class, and we have learned so much, and there's still so much that we are to learn moving forward. And if you ask me where do I see this in 5 years' time, it probably would be one where everyone that's involved in the teachings department is supportive of figuring out how to put this on load. But that would be the ideal, at least for me, looking forward.
This is still a transitional period, so I think a lot of these issues, we're just kind of working them out semester to semester right now, with the hope that once we get through the transitional period, there will be a higher degree of institutionalization, and that this will just be part of the way things work.
And with our course, we wanted to get something off the ground, and the response, it was building on work that people were already doing. For example, in geography, enormous amount of work on food security and food resources, and in psychology and decision-making and linguistics, language of use of food and language. So the overload provided a vehicle for something to get going. And we are also, we're at this point, what would we cut out? That movement towards integration. The food studies themes, we look for courses that have 30%. We use the rule of 30%. If it's 30% focusing on production consumption, meaning representation of food, we would like to add your course to the theme. So that's how we ended up with this kind of module animal. But the move towards an interdisciplinary approach will require, as I think as people, colleagues have said, a lot of time in free space in which to bring that together. I mean, to have that kind of synthesis for interdisciplinary approach to food requires a very large time commitment.
Thank you. Did you have a question, Larry, and then Catherine?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the question about kind of legitimating theme involvement within the department context. I guess I would encourage people to think about the faculty involvement would facilitate kind of new research opportunities that are very much on the horizon now. In the grant world or the research world I live in, you almost have to put together proposals across disciplines now to get funded. And, to kind of bring this issue up at the department level, I think would be one way to, one convincing argument about why we should have encourage our faculty to be involved in such endeavors.
I think that's an excellent point, right? I would say that the people who believe in interdisciplinarity are probably already involved. So the issue is essentially that there are some people who are inherently suspicious of interdisciplinarity, and if they're suspicious of interdisciplinarity, they're going to be suspicious of this initiative, right? So, but I think you're right. I mean, I certainly, in physics, we talk a lot about transformative interdisciplinary initiatives, and so people who are involved in the tech theme, Fire to iPhone, I think there are collaborations that can be built there that will aid with research opportunities, definitely, yeah.
Catherine.
Well, I was going to ask a question, but this exchange between Daniel and Larry made me think about how well this fits in with something else the college is working on now, which is each department making up a solid workload policy. And that's something in our almost next to the last draft of the history department workload policy. We have put in a specific provision about how interdisciplinary and group teaching will be factored in.
Oh,
So
that's useful to know.
Yeah. Because I would say my department has been one of those half and half departments. Half of the faculty are very enthusiastic about themes and about interdisciplinarity, and the other half skeptical. So now in our guiding document about workload, we've acknowledged that it is an important component of work in the history department. So I just share that. My question, Dan, this is going to make me sound like a skeptic.
But then the comment came first, right? So it's very good. You've diffused the.
Yeah, so I'm not skeptical about interdisciplinarity or team teaching, except for all the logistical things that we know to be problematic. But just the idea that everyone pull their weight. How does one ensure that? That there isn't someone just
Going back to that high school experience. Group project.
Exactly.
Free riders.
Yes, because I was always the kid who put in, the time and was very conscientious.
Get over it.
Some other kid would goof off and then still get the A that I gave them. So I have people, of course, I don't want anyone to name me. And you don't even have to use real life examples. You can call the person Professor X. How have folks dealt with the potential that something like that could occur in these team teaching situations?
Well, can I just say, because I have so many
Yeah.
people, and I put out a call and a request. Would people like to do this? And every one of these people came and said, please let me do it. I didn't expect to have 7 departments express involvement. I didn't expect to have 9 professors say, I would like to, I do this, I'm dedicated to this, please may I? And then come to meetings, and then come to all-day retreats, and then come to end of semester debriefs, and then plan for the next semester, and get paid very little. And it's been, for me, the most amazing experience, because they said, this is exactly what I want to do, please. And in that way, the overload makes sense, because it allows them the flexibility to stay involved while perhaps they explore other research opportunities, or while they see where does really this go within the institution, but it allows them to talk about what they've been doing and what they value and what they think students are interested in. So it's really been incredible. Everybody turns their papers in more or less on time. Everyone uploads to the Blackboard, so there are no free riders in this course.
Yeah, I was just going to add, it's a very interesting question to ask, in the sense that never occurred.
Yeah.
And I think, really beginning from the beginning, when the invitation was first put out, would you like to come talk about this? The energy and enthusiasm among the faculty and the new relationships, it's been a wonderful opportunity. And I think it's very much echoing what Theresa's saying in different words, but it's like overall it has been such a positive experience that it honestly never even occurred to me to even wonder about that.
It's a self-selected
Group.
I think that's
Yeah.
true.
It's
Yeah,
not-
very.
yeah.
And I think the other thing that, so we were all that kid in high school, right? So
Yes.
Wouldn't be
Oh, we would, yeah.
right. So we're a self-selected group because we chose to pursue education to this extremely advanced level, right? And then, as Haley says, right, these are people who stepped up and said, yes, I want to do this, right? So I've actually been extremely impressed with the professionalism, right, of everyone involved. So not just the 4 instructors of record, but people who, like Theresa's people, are coming in and doing this, you know, in our case, gratis, right? So people who come in and talk about geology just to talk about geology, but, you know, stuff, PowerPoints prepared a couple of weeks before, willingness to come and discuss how it integrates, prepare an exercise, teach us how to do a field trip. It was great, right? And so there's this aspect that's somewhat inspirational, right, to realize that there are a lot of really excellent teachers around, and then you sit and you listen to what they do, and certainly I learned a lot by listening to how people from across the college approached their teaching. We had incredibly different teaching styles. So, you know, Todd Eisworth, if you've ever, so he came in and did great lectures on statistics, but his teaching style is completely different to Beth Quitzland's teaching style, right? So, but I mean, but both very, very effective, right?
You can tell by the way they dress. Very formal, and the other's more casual.
But it's both very, very effective, right? So that is a very interesting thing to watch, is the way different ways, and it's not disciplinary, right? It's just personality, right? And so, and these are both very effective, right? So, yeah.
May I ask a follow-up of Edna, actually? So all of these excited self-starters who have put themselves forward to participate, and you said now some of your folks in your Capstone course will be teaching again. When you go to recruit new people, are you going to do the sort of thing that Theresa said, you know, sort of throw out an invitation and see who jumps at it, or?
So we already have, well, from just being involved in the theme and there are new people coming in. So we've had new theme hires, and Wealth and Poverty has two new theme hires coming in the fall. And part of what we put in their job description and what they're expecting to do is participate in the capstone in this course. So we want to involve them as much as they would want to be involved. So that's the first step. We'll be having conversations with them and seeing whether they want to be involved right away. I mean, you know, just seeing where they want to be at that point. But we've also had other people on campus who've been involved in the theme so far that also want to be involved, who've already approached us, either myself or Yang Kim, the coordinators, and said they want to be involved. But we are also waiting. I mean, one of the things, so, you know, we are doing this before we've seen what the students thought of the course. So who knows, maybe what I think worked great didn't, because they just did the evaluations last week and we don't get to see them until after we've turned in the grades. So we are also waiting to see what the students thought. And I told them to think about the topics that we chose to include this time. Well, not really chose to include, it depends on who's available to teach and when they can teach. But also think about what other topics they would have wanted to see. And some of them already gave me feedback on that. So there's a lot that will go into deciding, or not really deciding, figuring out who's going to be involved the next time. We are having discussions about what's the ideal size of a group. We decided, having never team taught before, we decided let's do 4 because it's very hard to set up a meeting when the group gets larger, particularly when you have people who do international field research and a lot of work happening in the summer, over those breaks in the summer or over in winter. And so we, you know, it's sort of like eyeballing it for people, but also we felt 3 is too little, and maybe 5 we begin to have trouble meeting. So there's all of that to take into consideration moving forward. But at this time, I guess I'm saying I don't have an answer to your question. That's a very long answer for a non-answer, but that's where we are. And the 2 people who are not going to be involved, they would like to remain involved long term, but, you know, sabbaticals come up or some other things come up and people just can't do it 1 year. People take up positions where they're directors, and they still are passionate about interdisciplinary teaching and about the course. They just logistically can't do it the next time.
This may be stating the obvious, but it actually just occurred to me that we're learning so much. I mean, just in terms of the more nuts and bolts glue of how to do this, that I think it's going to become easier to, to bring additional people in because, we're kind of inventing things from scratch. So that will certainly help.
It will be important to have transition people who are easing the transition. So if we've kind of thought about this in terms of our course, if we rotate faculty after 2 or 3 years, I mean, at some point, some people will rotate on and off, but it's important to have 1 or 2 people that are staggered or have established continuity. Yeah.
Well, as the panelists were speaking, I was jotting down some notes about different ways in which their courses have been integrated. And there's so many variations of glue. So this is not a complete listing of what the panelists mentioned, and certainly not a complete listing of all the different ways in which a course could be encouraged to cohere, to have some integration in some fashion. But here's just a partial listing. Providing an interdisciplinary approach to topics, developing a common vocabulary across disciplines, a faculty coordinator providing transitions and connections across modules, also known as the lunch lady approach, integrating learning activities, exploring common themes and questions, organizing around a central theme, concept, or narrative. I mean, and that's not even a complete listing of everything that people here on the panel had mentioned. So this session gave all of us an opportunity to share ideas with one another. So it's kind of multiple purposes, not only sharing out with the university community and colleagues here who are able to come to this session, but also to give a chance to compare and contrast different approaches to team teaching among the panelists. So I wanted to just ask, is there an idea or a thought or question that you developed as a result of discussing with one another, either in our pre-meeting or in the session today, that you'd like to share with the group?
Well, I like the idea, we're in the development of a Tier 3, and I am very struck by the freeform project. And I can say, well, they're doing it in wealth and poverty, so we can do it too. So I think that allows for this, again, expansion of how we view learning and how we capture what our students have actually learned. And I think that really gives a new depth to what we sort of think of in terms of assessment for Tier 3. So I really like that idea.
I'll tell you how it works out.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll echo on that point also in terms of the Tier 3. I actually really appreciate hearing the work that you've done to develop that course. It's the first time I've had the opportunity to kind of hear you talk through it. And I think that in the case of our theme, we've been focusing so much on that introductory course and thinking about the kind of curricular building blocks. But the Tier 3 has kind of been this point out there in the future, and we've sort of been puzzling over what form that could take. We haven't been quite ready to have that conversation. So I appreciate hearing how you've approached it in a collaborative fashion, one that's not tied to a particular department, but actually is truly interdisciplinary in the range of topics that it covers and also in the collaborative teaching approach.
I think this is a response to the question you raised, but it also occurred to me that another form of glue, which certainly makes sense in the context of sustainability, but I think it also can be very applicable across these different themes, and that's the general idea of problem solving. And so in the context of sustainability, the final project where the students did group projects focused on sustainable solutions. And since I think the genesis of the themes is very much connected to connecting students with contemporary problems and issues. And I think in our sustainability course, we've been very struck by how, like literally from day one, how very engaged the students were with just the general idea of problem solving and coming up with sustainable solutions. So, yeah, just sort of sitting here and listening to all of us, that idea has been floating more to the top, and I think that could be an interesting way to think about any number of the themes.
For me, it was really the idea that, and this actually came up when we had our pre-meeting, that you can actually team teach on load, because I didn't imagine that was an option. That to me was like, oh, I have to find out how this this happens. Just because I think it would be so much easier to really get that team teaching actually going. I was team taught. I'm Kenyan. I did my undergraduate in Kenya, so I was team taught, and also did cluster courses where you're doing a sequence of classes, which is maybe a different way of team teaching, but I did those different models and really, really appreciated it. And when I say I was team taught, it's this whole variety, and it's been interesting to see how much more difficult it is to actually institutionalize it in this system, coming from a different system. And so just hearing that this is the very first year and already there are some places where it has happened, it's very exciting for me. So yeah, that was very good to know.
So the thing I was most struck by was the fact that many of the challenges are common, in spite of the fact that people are adopting different models for, let's call it economic or other reasons, right? That many of the challenges are common. And I felt, I guess reassured is probably the best word to say, that other classes were struggling with this thing that we have found the most difficult, which is that the students are not used to switching disciplines. So we did a mid-semester evaluation, and I think a couple of students were excited by the diversity of topics, but a couple of them were just like, I come into class and I don't know what to expect. It's different every day, and it's very confusing, and yeah, I mean, and that is true, right? I mean, it is, right? And so, like hearing what the food studies class has done to try and aid students with that, what other classes are doing, is very useful. So yeah, as well as being therapeutic.
Could I just add one comment onto that? I think that one thing that I noticed the first time that we taught the class, we had one learning community linked to it. And I did note that the learning community gave us space to talk through some of those issues with the students outside of the course a little bit more. So I think the students who were in the learning community were able to develop sort of a little bit more of a meta level understanding.
There's totally a meta thing that you need to do, right?
To think about why it was important at the time of course registration that they be exposed to. I mean, you were able to have those conversations in the learning community in a way that there's not really space for in the class.
Yep.
So.
Anything else? Question: how do you solve problems like I was sick for 2 weeks and now
And you missed the whole module.
Oh no.
Are you talking about instructors or students?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when we had our earlier meeting, one of the pedagogical challenges is both instructors or whether forcing changes upon you. We have in our syllabus an attendance requirement, and the student, and our procedure is the student has to inform the instructor of record, that's me, and CC, the instructor of the module. It has been difficult, and if you lose the assignment points, you negotiate with the professor. So that's how we've handled it.
This is maybe more of a college level question, but so whether you have or Dean Frank, but is there like a mid-range? Is there a mid-range or long-term vision that all students would be affiliated with a theme? Because you mentioned, I've heard mention of certificates, but it sounds like that's not. There aren't maybe a lot. All of them don't have certificates.
Yeah,
Some of them do.
we have no plans to do a certificate, right?
So I guess it's kind of, the certificate would be a logical outcome if all were, or the majority of students were encouraged to be part of these. But is that kind of a midterm or a long-range goal for the college?
That's like a Dean Frank question.
Yeah.
So here's the reality is that students now transfer in, transfer out, come in with all this credit in advance, right? For AP or whatever. And so, you wouldn't know, but I can tell you that I'm co-chairing this general education task force to try to look at this. And the idea that all of our students would do anything is daunting. And so I thought from the very beginning it was very important to think about themes as the one of our team leaders described it as a curated experience. And it's really just advising students about some pathways that they could take. Duquette's not here. She leads the War and Peace team. She has biology majors who have no intention of taking a War and Peace course, but they go to all of the extracurricular events. They want to do all these other things because that's their level of involvement that they want to have with the theme. I think you have students, maybe some others. Maybe you could name students, some of you, that are sort of similar. That so I've always been pushing this idea of porosity. That this has got to be something that students can change. They get in from food studies, but then they realize sustainability is a little more interesting, or because of their scheduling issues or credit, they're just dipping in to do various kinds of things. And I believe that those students will be well served to partake in that way. But I don't think it's realistic to have this idea that everybody would have a theme, given the complexity both of the dynamics within the university, which is also pretty diverse when you think about distance learners and regional campuses. I mean, that's the light bulb went off in my head when I finally really took seriously this idea that not everybody is 18 to 21, 22. And so that has consequences. And then politically, there would be no way, I mean, this would be, we had this discussion in the beginning, and I stamped on every time someone wanted to say requirements, or these started to look like majors. I said, no, because I thought that even if we were successful, I would be dead by the time we would implement it. It just would take so long. So I don't, I think I'm actually glad that not everyone's interested at this point, because we couldn't handle it. And that's the big issue is, what if this is, tremendously successful? How would we scale it?
Well, you can already hear, right? There's more demand, like your class, right? If your class is going from 80 to 120, right?
Yeah.
So we're already, scalability is one of the things we have to work on, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll have to, deal with some of those kinds of issues. The other thing that hasn't been said, but since we're talking generally, is you all didn't explicitly say, but I want to say that I think that you're still recruiting, right? So I don't think that you've been talking about the people teaching. There are many roles within teams. There's still space for people to get involved, and I think everybody, that's a fair statement, would welcome a conversation.
Right.
And there are teams yet to be developed.
Yeah.
This is not the entire universe of themes. I threw a couple out there that stuck to the wall, a couple didn't. I still think there's some interesting ideas out there to be explored. And so, for that reason, once it's a requirement, then you have to support it, and the student, there are only 3 students, but they're in their sophomore year, so we have to, you get stuck in these.
I think Larry's comment, and others have said this in different ways, but of valuing the collaboration and interdisciplinarity within the department is really obviously key to making this sustainable. And then I want to make a suggestion, but make it gently, because I know when you're really involved in something and you hear what I'm going to say, you're going to be like, how could you know? All right, but so I have known, actually I tend to send people to food themes or food matters only because I see Theresa in the office and she talks about it a lot. So, but the list of courses, so there, I see it hanging in the hallway, right? There's the themes and there's the courses. So I'm generally aware of that, but, and I'm a at least medium range advisor, okay, I'm not like the worst, not the best, but I have like generally my radar out for the things that would be good suggestions for students. So my suggestion is, and again, I know that you're gonna say, well, there's the website, and you could, but if there would be sort of like a, I don't know, I feel like I don't always have kind of what I feel like I need to do my best advising at my fingertips in terms of themes.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, it could just be me missing it or having to go out in the hallway and find that. But I like the couple of times that I've had that sheet in my office while I'm meeting with my advisees, then I'm able to be a better advisor because I do think this is fascinating and it has a lot of power for student learning, structuring it. So.
And those sheets should be going out to all the faculty in arts and sciences anyway.
So we're trying,
you may-
we
as
apparently
email.
have not been successful completely.
So but that's good to know, that's good to know. Yeah, so one more comment, please,
It's a question.
or question.
Sort of related to that, every year for 15 years now, I teach hardcore undecided freshmen, first semester, first quarter freshmen. And I spend besides the 50 other things that we're supposed to work with them on, I spend a lot of time trying to get them to think about choosing their major and how they're going to choose their major and the process to getting to choosing their major. I agree with Professor Mannering that some of these courses could serve as really good recruiting tools for students to figure out what their majors are. So my question is, despite, I know you guys are really busy, you do a lot of work with what you do. Do you have spokespeople that come out and speak to freshman classes where we could have 2 or 3 speakers maybe in a classroom in a day that would help on your terms to explain it much better than I could explain it in an advising session with my students?
I think that's something that we've all probably kind of dabbled in or considered to different degrees, but right, it is hard to generate the manpower to hit all of those big introductory lecture classes. One thing that I think we have talked about a little bit more is working through the learning communities. And because the learning communities for first semester freshmen, right, they all have those events where they have a certain number of activities they have to go attend. And so we've been able to generate so many events through the themes in the last year and continuing to next year that I think that's an area where students could start to be directed to some of the events in a way that would introduce them to the theme, even if they're not initially in those theme classes.
I would like to mention that our Director of Communications is here, Lori Bauer. You want to say a little bit about some of your efforts to get the word out more broadly? And I think that's a really good question that you've raised.
Sure. So we're going to do a theme app, which should roll out in time in Apple format for VSO. And we held a focus group with the people that are designing the app. And it becomes very obvious that the technology that connects advising and the course availability in DARS, which I think is a 1990s functionality, is really not current technology. So the app will allow us to push those courses that are offered now in a different way than we could on paper or the website. But certainly the students indicated a longer-term solution to the advising module would be better.
Yeah, great, thank you. And if you would like to follow up, I'd be happy to just send out the query or organize responses to whatever the issue is. So hatchL@ohio.edu. So feel free to do that, and I'd be happy to follow up with any of these questions. So thank you. So I want to thank all of our
Can
panel.
I just say something
Yeah.
before? Sorry. We did bring our
I was
syllabus.
going to just say that.
Yeah.
So, but go ahead, please.
We did each of the courses represented here. We brought a few copies of our syllabi. If you'd like to take a look, you're welcome to do that.
Thank you. So thank you so much for